What's up out there? We have been progressing through the various Melvor idol skills and we are down to the hit point skill. When I first thought about this video, the first thing that came to mind was maybe talking about auto eat and how all that worked. But then I looked at the wiki page, which a quick reminder, if you scroll all the way down, there is a link to it here. It is a very good resource. Many of the things we're going to talk about today are from the wiki page itself. When I started looking at the page, I thought, you know what, there's a lot of good information here. Let's just go with this as the format for it. We can deal with auto eat and stuff like that in a different video because we're going to cover a lot of the topics that I was thinking about. And I wasn't really clear how to address the hit point skill itself because the skill is affected by a lot of different things. Sometimes your game mode may change it in the case of adventure mode and stuff like that, but you really don't do anything with this skill like you do other skills. You don't train this the same way you train other skills. This is a completely different thing. It's kind of like farming in that it's just done in the background, but it's even more passive than farming. Like you have basically no direct control over this skill. You can't directly train this. So when your hit points hit 0, you die. There's no way around that. No amount of auto eat, no amount of what am I looking for here? This wasteful ring. No amount of auto eat threshold and stuff like that will prevent you from hitting 0. So if a monster hits hard enough and does enough damage, you're going to hit 0 and you're going to die. So as plain as it can be, you can never hit 0. You can hit 1 hit point. So when your auto eat says you can do 512, that means you can do 511. I don't believe you can do 512 and survive. So once you hit 512, that means you've hit 0. So as long as the damage coming in from the monster you're fighting is less than this, not less than or equal to, less than 512, you're good. So as long as you can take that damage or manually eat and cover that. You can take a good amount more than 512 if you're holding down the manual eat button, but 0 is 0 and you're dead. So game modes don't really affect hit points at all like they do in other skills like hardcore combat only might. With hardcore combat only, you have no non-combat skills. With adventure mode, you have to buy the different skills. None of that applies. The big difference hit points has is that with adventure mode specifically, there's a ×10 multiplier. I don't really see much of a difference with that. Like if you have a sword that does 100 damage, it now does 1,000 damage. It's just ×10. There might be some subtle differences there, but I don't really notice in my gearing or whenever I've played adventure mode, I don't approach it very differently than I do standard mode or hardcore. Hardcore I'm a little bit more cautious with because single life and you're dead and gone. But other than that, I don't, you might take a little bit more damage in hardcore, but that's kind of about it as far as this skill goes, as far as I know, those differences to be. Training wise, there is no real way to train this. The more damage you do, the more XP you get. So that's kind of about it. This will train with any combat skill. So whether you're doing attack, strength, defense, ranged, or magic, you will train this. Now, obviously, if you're going to do more damage, you want to put prayer on there that deals more damage. You want to put more weapons that deal more damage. But you really can't train hit points specifically. You can't target it. As they would say in the fitness industry, you can't target fat loss. You can't target spot fat loss or whatever, however you phrase that. You can't really target hit points directly. There's not like a combination of weapons and armor and stuff like that that's going to give you the most benefit, at least not that I know of. You just let this thing run in the background and it gets where it gets, however fast it gets there. Typically, you're going to be focused on whatever you're doing as far as dungeons or Slayer or combat areas or something like that. That's going to dictate what you're doing, and the hit points just build up in the background. There is a formula for it, and I'm sure somebody could go out and min-max it, but are you really going to be target farming hit points, or are you going to be working on your attack, strength, or defense, ranged or magic, or are you going to be going with a specific dungeon and stuff like that? You know what I mean? Like you're going to be more focused on something else. This will just raise up in the background. Now, with the hit points, it's not with the hit point skill necessarily, but in the same conversation, there is health recovery. And that is through various different means. You've got manual eating, you've got auto eat, which is this thing here. You've got lifesteal, which actually you get some astrology skills that give you lifesteal, which if we come down to here, you get 5% lifesteal. That's part of the heart constellation, the veil constellation. The food, this one is food and heart. I mean, it makes sense. It's recovery, basically, if you look at it from that general sense. And then there is regenerate. Now, by default, you regenerate 1% of your max HP every 10 seconds, which can be modified. Hardcore does not regenerate at all, so there is 0 regeneration. You can get lifesteal, you can get auto eat and stuff like that, but in hardcore, there is no regeneration. So if you reach 0, you're done. That's it. There's no... So where this comes into play is like if you're fighting plants, and I showed this in my, I think it was in the defense video where I talked about your evasion will never get you a 0% chance. And even though it shows 0% chance, a plant, if you don't have food and you don't have any way of, we're talking about hardcore mode, hardcore combat only, hardcore whatever. If you, no matter how geared you are, if you don't have food and you're fighting plants that have a 0% chance to hit you, they will still hit you, and over a long enough period of time, you will die. So my point with that is that evasion, it can only do so much, and you need to have your food, your auto eat. There's so many other things you need to focus on. I don't know, I'm kind of, maybe not focusing a little bit too much on that aspect, but my point is that you definitely need to secure a good food source, get your auto eat as high as possible. There's ways of increasing your hit points. If you're in hardcore or a hardcore style game mode, you don't regenerate. So you have to make sure your food is important. When you're in a non-hardcore game mode, your natural regeneration will just heal you over time. And there's ways of increasing that and stuff like that. Where that really comes into play in standard mode is if you're playing on Steam and you're trying to get all the achievements, there's an achievement for killing the plant. That is far more difficult than you would think because your life regenerates faster than the plant can kill you. So basically what you have to do is go fight another monster and let it beat your health down. And you have to do this even at level 1 or 2 because you level up so quickly. You have to try and get that at very early on in the game, to where you take damage from like a Golban or something. You can't get killed by the Golban. You just have to take enough damage that you're low enough life that the plant can outdo that. It's kind of stupid, but there is like an actual strategy, and you have to employ a strategy because plants just can't naturally kill you. And you can't do that in hardcore. The achievement specifically says standard mode because you just unequip food and let the plant kill you. So I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to look at. I mean, I've got all the achievements in Steam, and it was definitely one of the more difficult ones to get, oddly enough. So as we've gone through the different skills, I've tried to address different things that can impact the skill itself. And there are weapons and things that can actually affect this, but these are for life leech or hit point regen. There is not much. There are some things that will add hit points and things like that, or take hit points away. There are some of those. And there are things that affect your auto eat efficiency. None of the equipment that we're about to talk about, the rings or the gems or any of that stuff, probably none of this is something I would equip to affect hit points directly. There is one thing in agility that I know I've used specifically because it's a flat hit point add, and that's the only thing that skill or that obstacle does. But for the most part, there's nothing I've ever equipped that I said, yeah, I want to equip that because it adds hit points. That has never been the case that I can ever recall. Typically, I'm equipping something because of some other feature that it has, or I'm using something else instead. So, weapon-wise, if we look at weapons, the Ancient Sword here, which is very hard to get, it's a very low drop rate, You can use this thing. This would probably be good in hardcore combat only. If you have 100% hit points, 20% damage to all monsters, but this thing has life leech, which your attack 100% of the time your attack heals you for 20% of the damage dealt. So this is actually probably good for hardcore combat only. You're probably going to get the Sunset Rapier far before this out of the same dungeon, and this is not as good as that unless you're in like hardcore combat only. The Nature's Wrath staff. Now this one, I was kind of surprised with this. I didn't really ever pay attention to it, but this one has plus 50 hit point regen, plus 40 max hit points, and then whatever other magic stuff. Obviously, you're not going to be using this for melee or ranged, but for the magic side, if you were to use this, you would get some bonuses of a little bit extra health and some max hit. Now, this would be good to keep in mind if you were in a certain game mode, whatever the game mode that was, or a speed run or something, and you're trying to get max hit points for a magic character. This would be good for that, and it's got a little bit better regen on it too. So that's kind of all the weapons that I was able to find. The Dragonfire Shield. Now this one always messes with me because if I'm switching between, let's see here, if I equip, I already have this ready to hotkey up. So I now have 1,280 hit points. If I take this off, it should switch, doesn't it? I thought I got more hit points. Why am I not? Oh, it is there. Yep. Okay. This is what throws me off so when I'm on melee and I have this shield equipped and I switch over, you lose 30 hit points. And it took me a while to figure that out because I was always equipping this for the Dragonfire, minus 30% damage taken from Dragon Breath. And I always forget that it adds that 30% hit points. So when you switch over, you see that little red sliver and you're like, why did I just take damage? Why am I healing? Well, it's because you're switching back and forth between the different combat styles, which you would commonly do switching around through Slayer areas and stuff like that. And then next thing you know, your auto eat changes. You know, this is 524 auto eat. This is 512. Like it changes some numbers on you, and you got to pay attention to that. You got to be very careful in paying attention to that it changes that between the different combat styles. And the same thing with that Nature's Wrath weapon. If you're equipping that, it can actually make changes that you don't necessarily intend for, but it does make changes nonetheless. Now, I was not able to turn up any armor. If I go into my inventory and I search by hit points, I was not able to find any armor that actually shows the keyword hit points in it anywhere. Whereas you would see this, like the Ancient Sword has the word hit point in here somewhere. Well, it's got the hit point keyword there, but it life leech. But hit points is typically where they define, like in the Dragonfire Shield, maximum hit points. The Nature's Wrath, it's got maximum hit points. So using that keyword did not turn up any armor. So for whatever that's worth, there is no armor that adds hit points to your life. There might be some life leech or something that I'm missing, but for the most part, there's no armor. There are some capes. The Vampiric Cloak. This thing adds life steal, and then it's got 4% damage reduction when at 100% hit points, which if you're always taking damage, this is probably not that good. The auto eat efficiency goes down. That means you're going to use more food, but you steal life when you use this. I don't think I've ever used this one because it doesn't have damage reduction. So anything that doesn't have damage reduction, I don't use. And this is in the Throne of the Herald expansion, so it's a little bit further on. And by that time, you're needing a lot more health and damage and stuff like that, which may be different today with the gem sockets and stuff. I don't know. We'll see where that goes. There is a couple of skill capes, which I have over here. The standard level 99, once you reach level 99, you're able to buy this skill cape, gives you plus 10 flat hit point regen. I've never used it. The superior version gives you plus 15 flat hit point regen, plus 5% lifesteal. This is going to be one of those deals at this stage of the game. By the time I have those, I'm using the fire cape, the infernal cape, or now we've got, what's this thing called? I don't have it on here. But there's the upgraded Infernal Cape and stuff like that. Those are the ones that I'm using. I'm not going to go out of my way and use something that gives me a little bit more regen or a little bit more whatever. It's just not worth it. I want the damage reduction. If I have a Cape of Completion or something like that, or one of the superior capes, I'm going to be going for those. Otherwise, I'm out. You know, that's what I'm going to be equipping. I don't know why I don't see that other cape. It doesn't matter. There is an upgraded version of this, and if we were to upgrade it, it gives you 6% damage reduction. So is it better to heal a little bit faster or better to have a lot less damage taken? Well, I would take the less damage taken myself, but that's where that is. There is those two capes we talked about. There are amulets. If we do, it's not on my thing here. If I do hit points, there are some amulets that these I wouldn't use, and they're not showing up. Where'd they go? I need the cerulean. So there is this iridium cerulean ring, which gives you 25% auto eat efficiency. Again, this is a passive one that you can actually equip up in this passive slot. I probably wouldn't do this because there's nothing else that it does for me. It's just auto eat efficiency, which I guess would be kind of cool, but I don't necessarily care about it. The Iridium Cerulean Necklace, this has got a big formula on it, but this has got passive hit point regen is disabled and increased lifesteal based on 5% times current hit point regen effectiveness. Again, something I'd probably never use. And then there's this one here, which speeds up your hit point regen at a loss of how much hit point you're regenerating, I believe is how to read this. So minus 7.5 second hit point regen, so it's going faster, but you're going less hit points. So you're regenerating more often for less hit points. Again, I don't think this is something that I would ever use. Now, there are some rings that are useful. The gold ruby ring is this one, which gives you plus 3% flat hit point regen. Again, this is probably not one I'm going to use. If I'm early on in the game, I'm going to, unless it's the only ring that I have, I'm probably going to be using the gold emerald ring because this gives you 4% combat XP. And then at some point, you're going to be switching over to the silver diamond ring because of the damage reduction. And you know what I mean? Like, there's just not, the other rings just don't appeal to me. To me personally, your mileage may vary, but I'm certainly not interested in them. Let's see, the Shaman ring, we'll do this one first. This one does have plus 6 flat hit point regen. This is a ring that I've used, and I never really paid attention to it doing the hit point regen. I use this whenever I get this, it's for magic damage. So again, with that Nature's Wrath staff, it might not be too bad. Gives you a little bit extra bump there. Speaking of which, there should be the Nature's something or other. This thing here, forgot what it looked like. Where'd that go? It is here. Nature's Blessing Ring. Now this mixed with the Nature's Wrath staff gives you some additional stuff, but this one gives you plus 10 flat hit point regen, which, you know what, now that I look at that, I bet you this says it needs that ring. Yeah, when equipped with the Nature's Blessing ring. So when you have both of them together, that combines and gives you the hit point regen and all that stuff. I guess I missed that. Can't miss that fact. The gold ruby necklace, we have it here. This one gives you minus 2 second hit point regen interval and plus 20% hit point regen. Again, there's probably never a time I'm going to use this. Most of the time, I'm trying to either use Fury of the Elemental Zodiacs or the Elite Amulet of Defense, Elite Amulet of Ranged, Elite Amulet of Magic, or the Fury of the Elemental Zodiacs. This thing does not give you anything as far as HP, but it gives you damage reduction. Like, there's so many other things I'd be using other than some of the things that affect your hit points. Like I said, it's just kind of not really anything that I would necessarily use. The Poison Virulence Ring. This is one to keep in mind. This one actually removes hit points. You get minus 30 max hit points. So when you put this on your ranged character and you're thinking, cool, I'm going to use this in poison stuff, Don't forget, this factors into your max hit points, which takes it down, which actually impacts your auto eat. So if I were to equip this, my auto eat's 524, it is now 512. I've actually removed some of my auto eat capability. So if I were to take off, let's just take all this stuff off. My natural auto eat is 512. If I equip this poison virulence ring, it's now 500. So this actually takes away that, and you have to pay attention to this when you're idling monsters and you're borderline on your auto eat and you equip this thing and you just died and you couldn't figure out why. That could be it. It actually drops your auto eat. So as you equip this stuff, you need to pay attention to that and make sure, you've got a different problem between the shield. So with the Dragonfire shield, this raises your hit points. With the poison virulence, it lowers your hit points. So you might actually be switching from plus 30 hit point. This one, the shield adds 30 hit points over here. And then you go over to the poison virulence that takes 30 away. You're now having a difference of 60 hit points. So it can be fairly significant. I'd have to unequip a whole bunch of stuff to swap between the two. But I guess we can just show it here. So baseline, I have 512 auto eat. If I equip this on a melee build, I now have 524. So if I take this off and equip this, I've now switched to 500. So it's 24 different, I guess. Yeah, 24 auto eat difference. Not 60, I guess. It's still a 60 point difference, right? If we equip that, it's 1250 for my max hit points. And then if I equip this, we're up to 1310. Yeah, so it's a 60 point difference. It's just the auto eat's got a percentage on it or whatever. And this gets murky because you've got all the auto eat bonuses, food efficiency, stuff like that, which brings things up and down. And that gets beyond the scope of this conversation. There is the Haunted Ring, which this thing actually does more damage to you, or I shouldn't say more damage, but per attack turn, you gain 3% global accuracy, 5% lifesteal, and 5% max hit points, or max hit, I should say, not hit points. This stacks up to 6 times and the stacks reset. However, a random curse is applied to you and you take self-damage equal to 30% of your current hit points. I don't see a time when I would ever use that. Because you're going to, unless you can take the damage coming in plus the damage you're dealing to yourself, I just don't see that being any good. There might be some edge case where that works, but I'm kind of not a fan of it. So the final ring that I want to talk about is the Wasteful Ring. Now this thing here, we are at a 512 auto eat. And 113% auto eat efficiency. If I equip this thing, we now have an 88% auto eat efficiency, meaning it's going to use a lot more food, but your auto eat went up to a 576. So that means you can equip this ring, and it is passive capable, so you can use it up there. You can actually raise your auto eat significantly. We're going from 512 to 576. That is a lot of auto eat threshold. Now, this is a maxed out level 120 character, so you're looking at that. But the point stands, once you've got access to this ring, you can actually bump your auto eat up significantly with this. And I always wondered how this worked, but I've never really used it or paid attention to it. But you can actually raise your auto eat up. Now that I'm actually looking at it for this video, you can raise your auto eat up. That raises that set point so that you can take more damage before you die. So if there's a monster that let's just say you're fighting something that does 520 damage. Well, you can't auto eat, or you can't idle it because it's above your auto eat. But if you equip this thing and have a big stack of food, you can now more than adequately handle that monster. So that would be the use case scenario for it. Again, though, 0 is 0. So once you hit 0 HP, you're dead, you're done and gone. That's it for that. So then we move over into the gems. Now, the gems are an interesting thing because we now have a couple of opportunities that we didn't have before. I got to find them. There is, let's see here. There is this combination Fury gem. I can't remember where I got this thing from, but by combination Fury, I think it means we have to get it from a couple of different places. I don't remember. I just don't remember getting it. This was the harder of the two to get, but this has a lot of things to it. Minus 3% max hit point for the target, 3% chance to double loot in combat, plus 20 max hit points, which is good. 5% damage to Slayer tasks, 5% Slayer coins, 5% damage to dungeon monsters, and 4% damage to combat area monsters. This is really good, and this would be probably the one I would use going into Throne of the Herald. Now, I know that I don't have this on my current Ancient Relic modes character, and I've got almost everything out of cartography so far, or archaeology, but I don't have this. So, and I haven't really gone through all the dungeons, so I don't remember where this one came from, but I know this is a really good one. The other one is this max hit point gem, which gives you plus 20 maximum hit points. So this one gives you a little bit of utility if you're low on hit points. Once again, you can actually, and what's this? Oh, okay. Yeah, you got to have all these different gems. All right. That's what the combination Fury is. You got to have all these different gems put together. Okay. I remember now. So if I was to equip this thing here and set that in here, you can see that very easily we can actually modify our 512 auto eat to 520. So in the example I was given earlier, if a monster did 520 damage, you could put this on, but 0 is still 0, and I would not try this. That's a little too close for my comfort. Even if you could hit 0 and recover from it with auto eat, I would not chance this, because if you get, this is like so right on the edge. And even if it's 519, if you get something that stuns or freezes or something like that, that throws you an extra 30% damage, which throws you over that border. So I wouldn't mess with it, but this is a nice opportunity or a nice option to just add a little bit of flat hit points to it. And especially with that combo gem. Yeah, now I need to go get that combo gem for my Ancient Relic mode. I'm going to make sure I do that. As far as pets go, we do have a couple of pets, and one of them is the little kitty cat, which is over here. He gives you plus 10 max hit points. So as you're leveling up hit points, at some point you'll just randomly get this. To my knowledge, there's no way of making it go faster. Then we've got Kiko, which I don't remember which one that is, but that one gives you plus 10 from the Trickery Temple, which should be down here. It is here. So it's the little candle thing. It gives you another plus 10 max hit points. And again, I'm a fan of using all the different expansions together. So all these pets come together. If you have Atlas of Discovery and you have the base game, Atlas of Discovery and Throne of the Herald, all of this comes together. So if you go and get this pet from the Atlas of Discovery dungeons, you'll have another plus 10 hit points when you go into Throne of the Herald and have access to that. So that's always good. Herblore, we do have a regeneration potion. This is probably one, I mean, aside from getting mastery in Herblore, I don't really think I've ever used it. I know I probably have at some point, just because I didn't have some other potion and I thought, whatever, I've got it, I'll use it. But if you've got any other potion that gives diamond luck, damage reduction, I mean, you name it, there's probably something else I'd rather use. Melee accuracy, ranged assistance, magic assistance, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many other potions I'd use before this one. Then we have prayers. There are actually a couple of prayers. Again, I would probably never use them. There's the rapid heal, which gives you plus 10 flat hit point regen, and rejuvenation, which is plus 20 flat hit point regen. Probably never use either one. For me, my strategy with prayers is to use the prayer that is associated with the combat style. So probably once you're at the end game, I'll probably use Battleborn for everybody. But if I'm using magic, I'm using Augury and Mystic Mastery. If I'm melee, it's probably going to be, Valor and Battleheart, or Battleborn and Battleheart. You know what I mean? Some combination of this, or Valor and Piety, Chivalry, something like that. For ranged, we're going to be doing Avidity for, well, actually it'd be Divination and Augury would be these two at the very end. And then we've got Avidity and wherever Rigor over here. You know what I mean? Like I'm probably going to be using those over any of this hit point regen crap. I don't care about it. Like your regen is not going to help 0 be better than 0. It might, I don't know, there might be some strategy where you can, but I'm more focused at this point on damage reduction, my food, how much my food heals for, my auto eat, how much my auto eat is. There's so many other things I'm focused on and how much damage I do, especially if you get like lifesteal. The harder you hit, the more lifesteal you get. So that would be where plus 15% magic max hit would come in, or plus 20% ranged max hit, or 30% ranged max hit. Like I'm looking to hit harder because that's going to do more lifesteal and stuff like that. That helps out that number versus rejuvenate or rapid heal. I don't think I've ever used those prayers. Agility. Now agility does offer a lot of different offerings here. We've got Rocky Waters, which gives you plus 50 max hit points. Remember earlier when I said there's like one thing that I do to actually use more hit points? That's this obstacle right here. That's the only thing it does, and that's the only reason you'd take it. You could do like tree hop or something, or maybe lake swim. I think the recommendation is either to do lake swim or Rocky Waters on this one. But there is a specific dungeon, and I was trying to think of this earlier. I don't remember if it's Impending Darkness or maybe at the very end of the game. There is one where they just flat out recommend take Rocky Waters because it raises your hit points and brings your auto eat up high enough to withstand the monsters you're going to fight. And that was specific to this, so you're swapping between Lake Swim and Rocky Waters depending on whether you want more damage reduction or more hit points, whichever. We have Mud Dive, which I don't remember which one that is. This one gives you plus 20 max hit points in addition to other stuff, as well as negative damage reduction. Where is that one? I wanted to look at that one here. Mud Dive. I should have wrote down which obstacle number this was. Wasn't over here, was it? There's Mud Dives right here. This one takes minus 2% damage reduction. I noted that specifically because I never take this one. I don't care how much that hit point goes up or how much accuracy and melee max hit and stuff is. That minus 2% damage reduction is huge, and I don't want to deal with it. So I would probably not take that one. I would put this one on something else like Coalstones. I think Coalstones is the recommendation, just because you get resource preservation plus 10% food healing value and stuff like that. Like that helps out more than this plus 20 max hit points or this ammo preservation and melee max hit. Like you're taking a negative 20 maximum hit points, which is bad, and minus 2% damage reduction, which is bad. These two are both bad. They might have their scenarios, but I would rather have something that I just set and forget. I don't want to set this and forget about it and then end up dying or not being able to survive a dungeon because I've got less damage reduction or less auto eat because of the reduced hit point. You know what I mean? So that I think that's a bad idea. Let's see. We've got Cliff Balance. That's the one. I think I looked at that's one right here. This one just costs a little bit more prayer points, but you're taking this because you're getting a bunch of accuracy and the max hit points. Like you're not just taking that for the max hit points. Raft Building, I think, is another one I take. Yeah, this one here. This one, damage to all monsters, a little bit of damage reduction and max hit points. Yeah, of course you're taking that. But again, it's not just because of the max hit points. And then Ice Jump, I think that's another one I normally take. Again, it's got a big package of stuff in here with max hit points. And then we've got, obviously, the pillars. Both pillars give you, well, I would have to show the pillar. Pillar of Combat gives you hit point regen, which is good. And the Pillar of Conflict gives you life steal, 50% hit point regen, and that's it. So that, I mean, obviously you're going to take both those for combat. On the summoning side of the fence, we do have the, where's it at? Where is the unicorn? Am I blind? There it is, right there. So the unicorn by itself, I guess we should show that one off first in case you've never seen that. The unicorn itself is plus 50% hit point regen. This is probably not one I'm going to use. Like if I'm doing melee, I'm going to be probably doing Minotaur and Yak or something like that. Maybe Centaur Yak, maybe Witch Yak. Or by the time you get down into this, we're looking at dragons or something like that. Once you get into the Throne of the Herald, you've got some of these that do other things like stun and sleep and things like that. Those are the ones that I'm more interested in. But the unicorn one itself, like by itself, I probably wouldn't use. I want this button here, and I want to switch to unicorns. There are some really good combinations though. Now, I wish I could move this because I wanted to point out this also has a base summon max hit of 173. This is part of the base game. It's got a really high base max hit. So in Atlas of Discovery, this would be very favorable to use. So under the normal base game, I would probably have ignored this, but because it's such a high damage dealer in the Atlas of Discovery expansion, I would be likely to use it there. So again, use case might change a little bit, but there's some cool ones in here. So if you're using it with the Centaur, when you get 7% of ranged max hit is flat hit point regen. So like you can, if you're trying to level summoning up and you don't really care, you're trying to reduce the amount of food you're using, you could throw something like this on. 100% burn lifesteal. That one is monstrous. I've used that on a speed run somewhere. Poison immunity's good. When a stun is applied for you, a heal for 10% of your max hit points. That one, like, there's some really good ones in here. 200% max regen if you have less than 75% current hit points. So, like, some of this is really good. But they're probably not something I'm going to go out of my way for unless it's Atlas of Discovery and I'm trying to do something specific. I might do different combinations, but this one is really good. The Tortoise one gives you, while you have at least 75% max hit point, you gain 40% summoning damage as barrier damage. That one is a huge one for going through the Atlas of Discovery, especially some of the thicker stuff. You're going to do more damage faster, so that one's a big bonus. So there's a lot of good options here. Depends on the scenario. Like I couldn't sit down and say, in this specific case, you're going to do this, and in that, you're going to do that. But there's a lot of good options here for many different situations that you're in, especially with Atlas of Discovery, since this does so much damage. In fact, I should probably make some of these for my relic mode. And then finally, we have Astrology. There are a couple of constellations that affect this. Veil, number 1, you get hit point skill XP by filling this one out. You also get accuracy rating by filling this one node out on here. The rest of this is all cooking and intervals and stuff like that. There is food healing value, which is good, and there is lifesteal, which is good. So there's 3 of these that are beneficial. I would probably try to get the hit point skill XP one sooner. The lifesteal definitely helps, and the food healing value definitely helps. But depending on how fast you're leveling, how much stardust you have. And then finally, we've got Ashtar. This one's auto-eat efficiency, which is definitely helpful. And that's kind of about it. So this one's way down there. You're probably not going to get this one unless you've got all the expansions. Well, you definitely have to have Throne of the Herald because this is far down on there. This one is 115. So you have to be level 115 to get this. And then have enough stardust to fill it out. And it gets far enough down there that it's probably not something you're going to have early on unless you start with Astrology and just let that go for a couple of weeks and fill all this out. But anyway, that is everything. I learned quite a bit about the hit point skill. That's everything I know and everything I apply to the hit point skill. I actually learned some things along the way, and some of the items that I would use, like this combination gem that we were looking at. That's probably one I should get with my Ancient Relic mode because that would be helpful going forward. That's one that I could use in Throne of the Herald. It's there, it works, it does a lot of cool things, and that's probably something I need to work up and gather before I go forward. Because it's going to do a lot of cool stuff. But as far as hit points itself, there's really not a whole lot to it. You just let it go in the background, it levels up, and that's kind of about it. So hopefully you found this video helpful, and that will do it for this one. We will catch you on the next one. Take care.